The crystalline spires of the Xarnian capital stretched toward twin suns, their iridescent surfaces casting rainbow patterns across the pristine walkways below. Marcus Vale adjusted his environmental suit's translator as he approached the sacred gardens, his heart racing with excitement and nerves. After 3 years of preparation, humanity's first cultural exchange mission to the Xarnian Empire was finally underway, and he was about to witness their most revered ritual site. Remember, no photographs, no recordings, and absolutely no touching anything, Ambassador Torres had warned him that morning. The Xarnians have agreed to this visit as a gesture of goodwill, but their sacred spaces are off-limits to outsiders. Marcus understood the gravity of the situation. The Xarnian Empire controlled 7 star systems and possessed technology that made human achievements look primitive. This diplomatic mission represented humanity's best chance at establishing peaceful relations with their powerful neighbors. As the team's xenobiologist and cultural liaison, he'd spent months studying their customs, their language, their intricate social hierarchies. What the textbooks hadn't prepared him for was their beauty. The garden itself seemed alive, with plants that responded to movement and light that pulsed in harmony with some invisible rhythm. Crystalline trees hummed softly in the breeze, their leaves chiming like distant bells. At the center of it all stood a fountain that defied physics, water flowing upward in spiraling helixes before dispersing into glittering mist. Marcus was so absorbed in documenting the botanical specimens, mentally, of course, that he didn't notice the approaching figure until a melodious voice spoke behind him. "You should not be here, human." He turned, and his breath caught in his throat. Standing before him was the most magnificent being he'd ever encountered. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that seemed to contain the aurora itself, shifting patterns of silver and blue that flowed like liquid starlight. Her hair fell in waves past her shoulders, each strand appearing to be spun from moonbeams. But it was her eyes that held him captive, deep violet orbs that seemed to see directly into his soul. I'm sorry," Marcus stammered, suddenly aware that he was staring. "I'm with the diplomatic mission. We were given permission to." "Permission to observe the outer gardens, yes," she interrupted, moving closer with fluid grace. "But this is the inner sanctum. The heart of our most sacred space." Her voice carried both authority and something else, curiosity, perhaps. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I got lost. The layout it's incredible. I've never seen anything like it." He gestured helplessly at the surrounding beauty. "Your people's integration of technology and nature is extraordinary." Something flickered across her features, surprise, maybe amusement. "You appreciate our aesthetic?" "Appreciate?" Marcus laughed, forgetting protocol entirely. "It's like walking through a dream. On Earth, we have gardens, but nothing that lives and breathes like this. The way the light responds to the plants, how the water seems to sing, it's pure poetry." She tilted her head, studying him with those mesmerizing eyes. Poetry. An interesting choice of words. She moved closer, and Marcus caught a scent like winter air and starflowers. "I am Zephyra." "Marcus Vale," he replied automatically, then his brain caught up with his mouth. "Wait. Zephyra? As in Princess Zephyra? Heir to the—" "The same," she confirmed, amusement clear in her voice now. "And you are the xenobiologist the Council has been discussing. The one who claims humans and Xarnians might have more in common than we believe." Marcus felt his career flashing before his eyes. Here he was, alone with Xarnian royalty, having violated their most sacred space. "Your Highness, I am so sorry. I'll leave immediately. I never meant to." "You find beauty in what we create," she said softly, cutting off his apology. "Most species see only technology to be acquired or power to be feared. When was the last time someone described our gardens as poetry? I imagine you don't get many visitors here." "None," she admitted. "These gardens are forbidden to all but the royal family. I come here when the weight of duty becomes overwhelming." There was something in her tone, a loneliness that Marcus recognized. The burden of being different, he said quietly. Of having everyone expect you to be perfect, to have all the answers. Her violet eyes sharpened. You understand this feeling? I'm the first human to set foot on your world, Marcus replied. Every word I speak, every action I take, represents my entire species. The pressure is. He trailed off, realizing how presumptuous he sounded. Suffocating, Zephyra finished. Yes. I know this burden well. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, surrounded by the garden's ethereal song. Marcus found himself studying her face, noting the subtle play of colors beneath her skin, the way her expression seemed to shift between regal composure and something more vulnerable. I should go, he said finally. If anyone discovers I was here, they will assume I am showing you the gardens personally, Zephyra said smoothly. A diplomatic courtesy. Would you do that? She smiled then, and it transformed her entire face. Perhaps I am curious about the human who sees poetry in crystals. And perhaps I'm curious about the princess who hides in sacred gardens. Careful, Marcus Vale, she said, but her tone was playful. Curiosity can be dangerous. So can beauty, he replied without thinking, then immediately flushed. I'm sorry, that was honest, she finished. Refreshingly so. As they began walking through the garden together, Marcus noticed how the plants seemed to respond to Zephyra's presence, their bioluminescence brightening, their musical tones harmonizing. They know you, he observed. I've been coming here since I was young, she explained. Before the weight of succession, before the endless lessons in statecraft and diplomacy. This place remembers when I was simply, myself. Who are you, when you're simply yourself? She paused beside a cluster of singing crystals, her reflection multiplied in their faceted surfaces. Someone who dreams of flying between the stars, who writes terrible poetry in ancient dialects, who wonders what lies beyond the boundaries of our empire. She turned to him. Someone who has never met a being from another world who didn't either bow in fear or calculate how to use me. I'm not bowing, Marcus pointed out. No, she agreed, moving closer. You're not. The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. Marcus was acutely aware of how close she stood, how her presence seemed to make the very garden hold its breath. This was dangerous territory, diplomatically, professionally, personally. Princess, he began. Zephyra, she corrected. In this place, I am simply Zephyra. Zephyra, he repeated, loving the way her name felt on his tongue. This is complicated. The most worthwhile things usually are. She reached out, her fingers stopping just short of touching his face. Tell me, Marcus Vale, do you believe in destiny? Before he could answer, the sound of approaching voices echoed through the garden. Zephyra stepped back smoothly, her regal mask sliding into place. Your Highness, a voice called in the Xarnian tongue. The council requests your presence. Of course they do, she murmured, then called back, I will attend them shortly. She turned to Marcus, her expression unreadable. This meeting never happened, understand? Understood, he replied, though part of him wanted to protest. As she began to leave, she paused. The meditation pavilion at the edge of the capital. Tomorrow, 1 hour after the second sun sets. If you wish to see more of our poetry. Then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone among the singing crystals, his heart pounding and his mind reeling. He'd come to Xarnia to study an alien culture. Instead, he'd found something, someone, that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe. The garden's song seemed different now, more complex, layered with harmonies he hadn't noticed before. As he made his way back to the diplomatic compound, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn towards something extraordinary and terrifying. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Princess Zephyra stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her private chambers, watching the twin suns set over the capital's crystalline skyline. The meditation pavilion would be bathed in twilight now, its ancient stones warm from the day's light. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, feeling the subtle vibrations of the city's energy grid humming through the crystal matrix of the palace walls. She shouldn't go. Every rational thought, every lesson in statecraft, every whispered warning from her childhood told her that meeting the human again was madness. The Xarnian Empire had spent millennia building its reputation on strength, purity, and the absolute superiority of their bloodlines. To be seen consorting with an alien, especially alone, in secret, would be scandalous beyond measure. And yet, she found herself changing from her formal court robes into simpler attire, her heart racing with anticipation she hadn't felt in decades. "Your Highness." Her personal attendant, Vesa, appeared in the doorway. "The evening council meeting has been postponed," Zephyra said smoothly, pulling a midnight blue cloak over her shoulders. "I require solitude for meditation." Vesa's expression remained carefully neutral, but Zephyra caught the flicker of concern in her aide's silver eyes. After 30 years of service, Vesa knew her charge better than anyone. "Shall I inform the guard detail of your intended location?" "That won't be necessary. I'll remain within the palace grounds." It wasn't technically a lie. The meditation pavilion sat at the very edge of the palace complex, in the ancient gardens that predated the current dynasty. Zephyra had discovered the hidden passages leading there as a child, and she doubted even Vesa knew of their existence. As she made her way through corridors lit by bioluminescent panels, Zephyra's mind wandered to the human who had stumbled into her sanctuary. Marcus Vale. Even his name felt foreign on her tongue, yet somehow right. She'd spent the day researching him through the diplomatic files, learning about his background, his work, his species. Humans were such curious creatures, short-lived yet passionate, fragile yet remarkably adaptable. Their planet was a single world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, yet they'd managed to develop faster-than-light travel in less than 2 centuries. By Xarnian standards, they were barely out of their technological infancy. But Marcus hadn't looked at her with the calculating gaze of someone seeking advantage. He'd seen beauty where others saw only power. Poetry where others saw only prestige. The hidden passage opened into the meditation pavilion just as the second sun touched the horizon. The ancient structure was carved from a single massive crystal, its surfaces worn smooth by countless hands over the millennia. At its center, a pool of perfectly still water reflected the darkening sky. Marcus was already there, standing at the pool's edge with his back to her. He'd removed his environmental suit, wearing instead simple human clothing that emphasized his alien nature, the strange uniformity of his skin tone, the impossible darkness of his hair, the compact efficiency of his form. "I wasn't certain you'd come," he said without turning around. "Nor was I," Zephyra admitted, moving to stand beside him. "This is unprecedented. Meeting in secret with an alien princess?" "Yeah, I'd imagine so." He turned to face her, and she was struck again by the intensity of his brown eyes. "Thank you for trusting me enough to come." "Trust is a luxury I can rarely afford," she said quietly. "But yesterday, in the garden, you spoke to me as if I were simply another person. Do you know how rare that is?" Marcus studied her face in the fading light. "Lonely at the top." "Isolated," she corrected. "Every conversation is filtered through protocol, through the expectations of my station. Every interaction calculated for political advantage." She gestured to the pavilion around them. "This place is one of the few where I can simply exist. And now you're sharing it with me." "Yes." The admission felt dangerous, thrilling. "I am." They sat on the crystal benches surrounding the pool, the space between them charged with possibility. Marcus broke the silence first. "Tell me about yourself." "Not Princess Zephyra, heir to the throne. Just Zephyra." No one had ever asked her that question. She found herself speaking of things she'd never shared, her childhood spent exploring the palace's forgotten corridors, her fascination with the ancient texts that spoke of times when their people traveled between worlds freely, her secret dream of seeing the galaxy beyond their empire's borders. "Your turn," she said eventually. "Who is Marcus Vale when he's not representing humanity?" He laughed, a warm sound that seemed to resonate in the crystal around them. "Someone who spent his childhood cataloging insects in his backyard, who chose xenobiology because he was convinced we weren't alone in the universe, who volunteers at refugee camps because he believes understanding begins with compassion." "A dreamer," she observed. "Guilty as charged. My colleagues think I'm naive for believing different species can truly understand each other." "And what do you believe now?" He met her gaze directly. "I believe I'm sitting with the most fascinating person I've ever met, regardless of species." The air between them seemed to shimmer, and Zephyra felt something she'd never experienced before, a tingling at the edges of her consciousness, as if someone was gently touching her mind. Her telepathic abilities, dormant since childhood training had taught her to suppress them, were responding to Marcus's presence. "That's impossible," she whispered. "What is?" "I can sense you. Your emotions, your thoughts. It shouldn't be possible with an alien mind." Marcus leaned closer, concerned. "Is that bad?" "It's unprecedented." She reached out tentatively, her fingertips brushing his hand. The contact sent a jolt of sensation through both of them, not just physical, but something deeper. A connection that bypassed language, culture, even species. "Zephyra," Marcus breathed, his hand turning to capture hers. "This changes everything," she said, but she didn't pull away. "If the Council knew that a human could form a telepathic bond with Xarnian royalty. They don't have to know. Secrets have a way of revealing themselves." But even as she spoke, she was moving closer, drawn by something beyond rational thought. "Then maybe we should make the most of the time we have." The kiss, when it came, was electric. Not just the meeting of lips, but the collision of two minds, two souls recognizing something fundamental in each other. Through their newfound connection, Zephyra felt Marcus's wonder, his joy, his fear of losing something precious he'd just found. And he felt her, the loneliness she'd carried for decades, the weight of expectations, the desperate hunger for genuine connection that she'd buried beneath layers of royal duty. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This is dangerous," Zephyra said, but her arms remained around his neck. "Worth it, though. Potentially catastrophic for both our peoples if discovered." "That's not what I asked." She studied his face, memorizing every detail. "Yes. Worth any risk." Over the following weeks, they met in secret whenever possible. Zephyra would slip away from her duties, using her knowledge of the palace's hidden ways to reach their various rendezvous points. Sometimes the ancient pavilion, sometimes the abandoned observatory in the North Tower, once even the thermal caves beneath the city where the planet's geothermal energy created natural saunas. Each meeting deepened their connection. The telepathic bond that had formed between them grew stronger, allowing them to share not just thoughts and emotions, but memories, dreams, the very essence of who they were. Zephyra learned about Earth's blue skies and rolling oceans, while Marcus experienced the soaring crystal cities of her homeworld through her childhood eyes. "Your people have a concept called soulmates," Zephyra said one evening as they lay together in the thermal caves, her head resting on his chest. "I always thought it was primitive superstition. And now? Now I understand why they developed the word." She traced patterns on his skin, marveling at its uniform texture so different from her own shifting hues. "We are connected in ways that transcend biology, Marcus. What we have, it's not just rare. It may be unique in the galaxy's history." "No pressure there," he said lightly, but she felt his underlying tension through their bond. "You're worried about the diplomatic mission." 3 months, he confirmed. "That's how long we have before the delegation returns to Earth. And I still haven't figured out how to tell them that I've fallen in love with the crown princess of the most powerful empire in known space." Zephyra was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps you don't tell them." "What do you mean?" "Perhaps you stay." The suggestion hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Through their bond, Marcus felt her desperation, her certainty that she couldn't let him go, mixed with terror at what she was proposing. Zephyra, I can't just abandon my life, my responsibilities. Can't you? She sat up, her skin pulsing with agitated colors. What waits for you on Earth? A laboratory? Research that others could continue? Here, you could have everything. A place at court, resources beyond imagining, and... She paused, vulnerable. Me. It's not that simple. My disappearance would cause an interstellar incident. Both our governments would. Both our governments already consider this relationship impossible, she interrupted. They would never sanction a union between human and Xarnian. At least this way, we would have each other. Marcus sat up beside her, taking her hands in his. There has to be another way. We can't base our future on running and hiding. Then what do you propose? Before he could answer, a sound echoed through the caves, footsteps, multiple sets, approaching fast. Zephyra's skin went pale silver with alarm. Someone followed us, she whispered. Princess Zephyra. The voice that called out was sharp with authority. By order of the High Council, you will present yourself immediately. Marcus started to stand, but Zephyra pulled him back down. The secondary passage, she hissed, pointing to a narrow opening partially hidden by mineral formations. It leads to the old aqueduct system. Follow it north until you reach the diplomatic quarter. I'm not leaving you. You must. Her mental voice was as urgent as her whispered words. If they find us together, it won't just be scandal. They'll consider it treason. The footsteps were getting closer. Marcus could hear voices now, multiple speakers in rapid Xarnian. Go, Zephyra commanded, pushing him toward the passage. I'll contact you when it's safe. Zephyra. Go. He squeezed through the narrow opening just as lights appeared at the cave's main entrance. The last thing he saw was Zephyra standing alone in the center of the thermal pool, every inch the imperial princess, her chin raised in defiance as the guards surrounded her. Through their bond, even as distance separated them, Marcus felt her fear, her determination, and underneath it all, a love so fierce it took his breath away. Whatever came next, their secret was out. And everything was about to change. Cadet Jenna Cross had always prided herself on her observational skills. As the youngest security officer ever assigned to a diplomatic mission, she'd earned her position through relentless attention to detail and an uncanny ability to spot patterns others missed. Which was why Marcus Vale's recent behavior had been driving her absolutely insane. Something was wrong with her friend, and she was determined to figure out what. She watched from across the diplomatic compound's mess hall as Marcus picked at his breakfast, his eyes distant and unfocused. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually impeccable appearance was disheveled. For the past 3 weeks, he'd been disappearing at odd hours, returning with vague explanations about additional research and cultural observations. Earth to Marcus, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. You look like hell. He startled, nearly knocking over his coffee. Jenna. Hey. Just tired, that's all. Tired from what? Your mysterious nighttime expeditions. She studied his face, noting the way he avoided her gaze. Come on, we've been friends since the academy. What's going on? Nothing's going on. The work here is intensive. Lots to process. Jenna leaned back, crossing her arms. Marcus was many things, brilliant, passionate, sometimes naive, but he'd never been a good liar. The way he was fidgeting with his sleeve, the slight tremor in his voice, the fact that he still hadn't made eye contact, all classic tells. Marcus, she said gently, whatever it is, you can tell me. Is it the pressure from the mission? The ambassador riding you too hard about the cultural reports? For a moment, his expression softened, and she thought he might actually confide in her. Then his wrist communicator chimed, and his face went pale as he read the message. I have to go, he said abruptly, standing so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. Marcus, wait. But he was already heading for the exit, moving with the kind of urgency that set off every alarm bell in Jenna's security-trained mind. She gave him a 30-second head start, then followed. The compound's layout was simple enough, administrative buildings arranged around a central courtyard, with the residential quarters forming an outer ring. Marcus headed straight for the perimeter, toward the maintenance section that housed the environmental systems and waste processing. Hardly the location for cultural research. Jenna kept to the shadows, her training taking over as she tracked his movements. Marcus used a service entrance she hadn't even known existed, producing what looked like a modified access card to bypass the security locks. That alone was enough to justify her suspicions. Where had he gotten unauthorized access codes? The maintenance tunnels were dimly lit and cramped, clearly not designed for regular human traffic. Jenna followed the sound of Marcus's footsteps, staying far enough back to avoid detection while close enough to track his route. The tunnels seemed to extend far beyond the compound's official boundaries, connecting to what appeared to be much older infrastructure. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, she found herself at a junction where multiple passages converged. Marcus's trail led to the right, toward what her wrist scanner indicated was a section of ancient Xarnian architecture. She was definitely outside the diplomatic compound now, in territory that was supposed to be off-limits to human personnel. A soft glow emanated from ahead, accompanied by voices, one unmistakably Marcus's, the other speaking in fluid Xarnian. Jenna crept closer, using her military training to move silently across the stone floor. "Can't keep meeting like this," Marcus was saying. "The risk is too great." "I know," came the reply in accented English. The voice was female, melodious in a way that seemed almost musical. "But I needed to see you. Something has happened." Jenna positioned herself behind a carved pillar and risked a glance around the edge. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. Marcus stood in what appeared to be some kind of ancient shrine, its walls covered in intricate crystal formations that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. But it wasn't the architecture that shocked her, it was his companion. The being facing Marcus was clearly Xarnian, tall and elegant with skin that shifted between silver and blue hues in the crystalline light. Her hair fell in waves that seemed to contain their own inner radiance, and when she moved, it was with a fluid grace that spoke of noble breeding. This wasn't just any Xarnian, the elaborate patterns on her clothing, the way she carried herself, even the deference in the crystal formation's response to her presence marked her as high nobility. Possibly even royalty. "Marcus," the Xarnian said, reaching for his hands, "there's something I must tell you. Something wonderful and terrifying." Jenna watched in stunned silence as Marcus lifted the alien woman's hands to his lips, kissing her fingers with a tenderness that spoke of deep intimacy. This wasn't a chance encounter or a professional consultation. This was personal. Very personal. "What is it?" Marcus asked, concern evident in his voice. The Xarnian woman, Princess Queen, took a shaking breath. "I visited the healing chambers today. The medical scanners detected. Marcus, I'm pregnant." The words hit the chamber like a physical force. Marcus went perfectly still, his face cycling through shock, joy, and terror in rapid succession. That's impossible," he whispered. "Our species aren't supposed to be compatible. The biological barriers are apparently not as absolute as we believed." The Xarnian's skin pulsed with colors Jenna had never seen before, patterns that seemed to reflect deep emotion. "The child is healthy, growing normally, but..." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "It's a hybrid. The first of its kind." Jenna felt the world tilt around her. A human Xarnian hybrid. The diplomatic, political, and biological implications were staggering. If this got out, it wouldn't just end Marcus's career, it could destabilize relations between their species entirely. "Zephyra," Marcus said, and Jenna's heart nearly stopped. "Zephyra. As in Princess Zephyra, heir to the Xarnian Empire." Marcus wasn't just having an affair with an alien, he was involved with the most politically significant being in known space. What do we do? Marcus continued, pulling Zephyra into his arms. If your people find out, if mine discover the pregnancy. I don't know, Zephyra admitted, leaning into his embrace. The council is already suspicious about my recent absences. And your delegation departs in 6 weeks. I won't leave you. Not like this. You may not have a choice. If they discover our relationship, you'll be branded a spy, or worse. And I. Her voice cracked. I'll be stripped of my succession rights, exiled, possibly executed for treason. They held each other in silence, and Jenna felt like an intruder witnessing something sacred and desperate. But she couldn't look away, couldn't process what she was seeing. Marcus, brilliant, idealistic Marcus, had somehow fallen in love with an alien princess and was now facing consequences that could reshape galactic politics. There has to be a way, Marcus said finally. Some precedent, some law we can invoke. There is no precedent, Zephyra replied. No Xarnian royal has ever bonded with an alien. The genetic purists will demand immediate termination of the pregnancy. The militarists will see it as contamination of our bloodline. And the humans won't be much better, Marcus added grimly. First contact protocols explicitly forbid intimate relationships with alien species. They'll court-martial me and probably declare the entire mission compromised. A sound from deeper in the tunnels made all 3 of them freeze, footsteps, multiple sets, approaching rapidly. Zephyra's skin went pale with alarm. The guard patrols, she whispered. They've found the entrance. This way, Marcus said, pulling her toward a side passage. But before they could move, lights appeared at multiple tunnel entrances. They were surrounded. Princess Zephyra. The voice that echoed through the chamber was sharp with authority. By order of the High Council, you will surrender immediately. Xarnian guards emerged from the shadows, their weapons drawn but not yet aimed. Their leader, a tall male with intricate scarification marking his rank, stepped forward. Your Highness, he said formally, you are commanded to return to the palace. Immediately. Zephyra straightened, every inch the imperial princess despite the circumstances. I am conducting diplomatic relations, Captain Nexar. Surely the council approves of better understanding between our peoples. Diplomatic relations do not typically occur in secret, Your Highness. Nor do they involve. His gaze flicked to Marcus with obvious distaste. Unauthorized contact with alien personnel. Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised peacefully. Captain, I take full responsibility for any protocol violations. The princess was simply. The princess, Captain Nexar interrupted coldly, is under direct orders from His Imperial Majesty to cease all unauthorized contact with your delegation. Orders that have apparently been ignored. From her hiding place, Jenna watched the standoff unfold with growing dread. This was about to become a diplomatic catastrophe of epic proportions. Marcus and Zephyr were caught, their relationship exposed, and a pregnancy that could change everything hung in the balance. She had to make a choice, reveal herself and try to help her friend, or remain hidden and hope she could find another way to assist later. Every instinct told her to stay concealed, to gather intelligence she might use to help Marcus later. But as she watched the guards move closer, as she saw the fear in both Marcus's and Zephyr's eyes, her decision crystallized. Marcus was her friend, her teammate. She couldn't abandon him now. Actually, she said, stepping out from behind the pillar with her hands raised, I think you'll find this situation is a bit more complicated than it appears. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Xarnian weapons swung toward her while Marcus spun around in shock. Jenna, he gasped. What are you, how did you? Followed you, she said simply, keeping her eyes on Captain Nexar. Security training. Though I have to say, your operational security needs work. Another human, Captain Nexar said with disgust. How many of your people are involved in this, liaison? Just me, Jenna replied. And technically, I'm here in an unofficial capacity. Jenna, don't, Marcus said urgently. This isn't your fight. She looked at her friend, brilliant, passionate Marcus who'd somehow found love in the most impossible circumstances, and made her choice. Yes, it is, she said firmly. Because someone needs to point out what you're all missing. And what is that? Captain Nexar demanded. Jenna took a deep breath, knowing she was about to either save the situation or make it infinitely worse. You're not dealing with a scandal, she said clearly. You're dealing with evolution. The first step toward something that could change both our species forever. The silence that followed was deafening. And in that silence, Jenna realized she'd just committed herself to the most dangerous mission of her career, protecting a love that could reshape the galaxy. The only question now was whether any of them would survive what came next.